So unlike the other moderators, due to Gavin's survey, I will let you introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Matthew Taylor. I work for At the Races. I've been a horse racing fan since Stoke City got relegated in the mid-1980s. I feel like I've worked for At the Races for almost as long, but my job is to look after the website and mobile app and digital platforms for ATL.
Well, thanks, Matthew. My name's Ryan Thurburn. I'm the Chief Product Officer at RMG. Today is the eve of my 2-year anniversary for RMG, Nick. I'll expect the card in the post. I joined RMG following 16 years in the bookmaking industry, working on the supplier side. So I'd like to think I know a thing or two about both sides of the industry, but less so around data and horse racing.
Hello, my name's Gavin. Puszczalowskyi, there we are. I'm also wearing the exact same shirt as Dave, so under instructions of Dave, you won't keep your blazer on, so that's exactly what I'm doing. So I am the co-founder and program director of Sports Broadcast Media. For 20 years, I was a commercial radio presenter, so I did play countless songs over and over and over again. And radio is all about customer retention, listener retention, making people listen to you as long as possible. And sports broadcast media is all about taking that expertise in retention and putting it into the world of betting.
So my name is Ylva. Ylva is a very Swedish name, which almost no one internationally can pronounce. But it's Ylva. It's not Iva, it's not Viva, and it's definitely not something else I won't tell out loud here. But I've heard everything. So I work for ATG, Swedish Horse Racing. We are both an operator, but also rights owner of Swedish Horse Racing. I also, since a couple of months, work a little bit for World Tote Association, so I know all about everything we talk about, coming together, standardizations, etc. And it's very, very hard, but let's be positive. I'm very glad to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's be positive, because I think we can turn things around. Data-driven insights for fan engagement and betting. So I placed my first bet on the Cheltenham Festival 25 years ago when my uni housemate came downstairs and said, "It's the Cheltenham Festival." I said, "Brilliant, I love jazz." So I was absolutely 21 years later. But a lot's changed in that time. You know, the prominence of football coming through, perhaps generational changes in how people actually consume sport. It kind of sets its own challenges for horse racing. So to kind of kick off, I've got kind of two open questions, really. And it's, what data signals best predict whether a casual viewer becomes a lifelong fan? And how can broadcasters, racehorses, operators turn dabblers into lifelong fans? So if we go down the line from Matt.
Thanks. Well, we can look at traditional data signals, things on from the analytics point of view, page views, where those page views are, what the interactions with content might be. As we see on our own site, we see that the engaged fan is looking at more detailed content. They're doing searches, they're watching archived videos, they may be tracking horses using that kind of functionality. That's where the end goal is. But to answer the question about, how can we turn dabblers, the biggest data point, it's backing a winner. It's having a winner. It's that emotional connection that you get when your horse passes the post first. And that's the window of opportunity. We all have it at some point. That's the window of opportunity that we should be looking to tap into. And it's almost on the verge of participation. And racing is a really hard sport to actually actively participate in. So for the TV viewer or the on-course dabbler, that's the bit where we can start that fan journey. And so if we try and think of a practical application for that, let's say somebody's back to winning on course and they're back to winning with the tote. When you go to collect your ticket from the tote now, you get a small receipt that says, "Well done, you've won this amount." And for most of us, for all that's a lovely experience because we're still on that emotional high of backing the winner. Next few minutes, that ticket's going to end up in the bin because we don't need it anymore. What we could do is we could place a QR code on that ticket. And that QR code could link to the replay of the race, the result of the race, a field in which you can input your contact details and get a message the next time that the horse you backed runs. You could add in free prize draw to tickets at the next meeting, that kind of thing. And that could be a first step on the road to becoming a fan. And that's turned that slip, that receipt, into a certificate of success. That's the opportunity that I think we've got to start getting into our mindsets as to how can we take that euphoria and extend it? How can we make somebody keep hold of that memory? Is there something physical we can do?
Thanks, Matt. I mean, Matt's talked about engagement there. Engagement's incredibly important. And that is the end of the life cycle. Interaction with website, interaction with video content. But let's face it, the younger demographic, they're social hounds. They spend all their time on social media. I think we all do. Social sentiment is very, very important. You know, Project Beacon has spoken about welfare. Project Beacon has spoken about attracting new audiences through new narratives in data. It all starts at social media. We're lucky enough to have started #RaceDay, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. 566 million views year to date, video views year to date, 10 million social interactions. Horse racing is part of culture in the United Kingdom and internationally, actually. And we need to embrace that. We absolutely need to embrace that from a broadcaster perspective, from an operator perspective, and also just as a wider industry. To attract new audiences, we must leverage social media much, much more effectively.
Yeah, I echo that completely. One of the key metrics is retention and making sure that people keep coming back. So if you have content that is out there, make sure the content hits home. I have kind of two types of data. I think there's cold data and there's warm data. Warm data for me is the kind of data that you use to hit somebody with a bullet point of information that makes them act. It's creating call to arms. And it's how you relay that information in terms of presentation, human interaction, whether it's audio, whether it's video, and it's giving people just enough information that they want to keep coming back for more. You become an information hub. So retention is absolutely vital. As I said, I was a radio presenter, so I knew that if I did a piece of content on the radio and someone texted my radio show, that they would be in the palm of my hand for 20, 30, 40 minutes thinking that my message was going to be read out. It's the same principle on a betting website. Give them a piece of information that they can act upon. And if it lands, great, they'll keep coming back for more. If it doesn't land, people have to be, they know that not all bets land. And in a way, it's not the bet landing that's important, it's the reason for the bet. The information you gave them, the reason for the bet. And if you have that authenticity, they will see coming back for more, because everybody knows that not every single bet lands. And you can turn a dabbler into a fan by kind of matching where they are with the right data at the right time, the most relevant data at the right time. I will confess that I am not the biggest horse racing fanatic in the room. So maybe I'm perfect for this, because maybe I am the dabbler. I am more into football and Formula One. And I know that when I have dabbled with horse racing, the level of data that can be thrown my way can be massively overwhelming, to the point of where it scares you off, because you go, I haven't got a clue what half of this means. So there could be a level of demystification, if you like, of the data, if you want to put a term to it, where if someone is dabbling, and we know that with horse racing, sometimes it's the colours, sometimes it's the name that people go for. If you just add a little bit of data, if you take all that data that's floating around and put it in one bullet point that's the most relevant data at the relevant time for a dabbler to act upon, then you can start to increase the level of data thereafter and start to introduce data to them that can then turn them back from a dabbler into someone who bets on a more regular basis.
Yes, well, in Sweden, there's a bit different, because we have such a big pools. We have big pool bets, V75. It's not so turning into V85. So it's not really a win bet that we, as a first bet for many people. Many people start betting on horses in Sweden just by betting together. So ATG's been very successful on this syndicate bets, where you create teams. You can have a team at your local betting shop, but most popular is that you create a team together with your colleagues, friends. and you make sure that someone has a lot of knowledge, makes a good system, and then you invite people to bet together. So you can make rather big bets and have a bigger chance of winning. So that has been a very successful way of getting new customers into horse racing. Because through that, you can also, everyone has to register. So you have all the contacts and you can start communicating with them. Attracting new customers, I think the biggest cost for ATG. And we pay a lot of money and we invest a lot of money into making horse racing visible almost everywhere. We pay a lot of money to one of the biggest broadcasters, so we are on television every week on the big race days. We make sure that we paying the journalists to make a lot of media around horse racing. So this socialized betting is a big thing. What I think we should be better on for ATG is that we actually we don't really care about the gamblers because they are with us anyway. We care so much about, the casual punter. So maybe we have to also be more sharp. So that's something we are going into more and more for next year, to really try to people to go from betting package bets to become, their own bets. Whereas data is, of course, very, very important.
Cool. I love that. Thank you very much. Yeah, certainly Scoop 6 used to capture our imagination in the UK, and it's a really nice way of getting into horse racing, a bit like how we had national lottery teams. Microphone finally works. Excellent. Who knew? Also, some of the points there, trying to create this story, getting people into horse racing and actually pushing it through social media as well. I think they're absolutely key points. And that makes me come on to kind of how personalisation and segmentation. We talked earlier about the BHA and 6 personas of bettor apps, and we spoke about Pokemon Go and how they have an entry journey into becoming fanatical about it. So I guess the question would be, how can you see personalisation and data tailoring to people for increased engagement in racing? And additionally, how can data-driven strategies make racing as engaging as other sports? Again, Will commented before on F1 has kind of reinvented itself as a data-driven sport that we can consume. So, kind of 2 open questions there, and I'll start with start with down the line again.
Okay. All right. Well, personalisation. I've always been slightly sceptical about personalisation, just because there's nothing worse than being misidentified. That some algorithm has decided that this is what you're interested in, and actually you're not. We've all had that experience where you've looked something up on YouTube and then you're just being fed a constant diet of stuff that you weren't actually that interested in. So I think you've got to be really careful around that. I would prefer the notion of personalisation on demand. So your baseline neutral experience has to be excellent for 80% of your target audience. But then, yes, if they want to personalise on demand, if they want to say, well, this is the type of racing I'm interested in, this is the type of bets I'm interested in, I want to see my odds displayed, fractional, decimal. I want to. If you register, then you can unlock more experiences. Then I think that's the way to go, rather than necessarily identifying somebody based on some very loose information that you're new to racing, so we're gonna feed you a more basic race card, let's say. Let the user tell you what level that they want. In terms of how personalisation could be used in racing as it's been used in other sports, the screen that we saw from the Hong Kong Jockey Club on the last presentation, for me, encapsulates it really well. Racing's challenges have got a large number of competitors and a relatively short time. That's the actual action, which is the race. And so anybody watching a race has got 2 questions. Which one's my horse? Is it going to win? Now, decades ago, people used to take binoculars with them to the races to try and identify those 2 questions. But Now, the obvious handset is the mobile phone. And so whether you're at the track or whether you're viewing on the television, I think the lessons we can learn are to put a data stream into that mobile phone of the horses that the viewer is interested in specifically, and let them see only the core data. You know, we want to keep it simple, but let them see the speed the horse is going at, the position it is on the track, the stride length, the jumping performance, those metrics. Let them see that they're weighted and color-coded to let you see how well is it going. And it's to see if you're looking for everything to be green. They're going too fast up front, but don't worry, your horse is in 10th, but that's the bright spot. And I think that's the way to really engage in that very small window that is the live race experience. Right.
Thanks, Matthew. I mean, I agree. I think customization rather than personalisation is key. So actually puts the control in the hands of the user or the consumer. But I do believe personalisation, true personalisation, computer-learned personalisation is critical to reducing friction in customer journey. You know, the younger demographic, the Gen Zs of the world, they expect it. They understand that a digital experience is personalised. They expect a friction-free experience or a friction-reduced experience. And essentially, if we can tailor experiences for that younger demographic, we've got a much higher chance of getting them to convert on horse racing, ultimately. Yes, of course, customisation is important. And actually, if you want to disregard something, I'm not interested in the winning distance market, or I'm not interested in even the each way market, let the customer remove it. But ultimately, we as media rights owners, we as operators, we understand where the value is. So ultimately, we need to drive the value through the value chain. And that's based on computer learning, AI-driven sort of behavioural analysis that can build experiences. I mean, if it were me, I would have horse racing on my homepage. I think the vast majority these days probably wouldn't have horse racing on their homepage of many sportsbooks. But on the Grand National, disregard the customisation. It's the biggest race of the year. You need to be able to overwrite any personalisation. You need to be able to overwrite any customisation, because ultimately we know where the value is driven in the sportsbook experience.
Yeah, I echo that. I can't really add anything to the first point. I think the second point is sometimes having fresh eyes on horse racing and what happens when the race is live as well. Maybe looking beyond the horse racing community to how we can engage customers, dabblers, serious punters. Because the one thing about sport, regardless of what it is it's when it's live and happening that it's at its absolute peak, because you have no idea what's going to go on. Obviously, I come at this from, I predominantly sports broadcast media deals with in-play betting for football. And football allows you time because you've got 90 minutes. So you can talk about a football game and then you can see it out rather casually. We know with horse racers, let's give a note, that they come thick and fast. And when one particular horse race finishes here, there's another one that starts there in 2 minutes, and they are sometimes quick pace. So that is a challenge in itself, because you can't necessarily have the data that shows Formula One cars going round for 90 minutes that you can have in a horse race that goes on for 2 or 3 minutes. But there's still something to be done. And I think what can be done to increase the level of engagement when a race is live, so that people haven't just placed their bets and then sit back and watch it happen. How can you keep them actually engaged with the horses, the horse racing? What's the story you can tell before the horse race, so people give a damn as to what actually happens in this? Because as you referenced, the horse tracker, that's absolutely brilliant. Is there anything else? Is there any other level of gamification or visualization that can be shown on screen when a horse race is live that takes people to an extra element of engagement, rather than just sitting back to see if what they chose wins the horse race or not? Is there anything else that can be done? I think they're very important questions to be asked.
Well, I agree very much with you. I don't think that we should get customers stuck in a bubble, but it has to be friction-free. And ATG is working very much with personalization and creating a very simple and fast betting experience. We also have something that we called before, during and after about horse racing. And we put a lot of money and effort into TV productions. We have the TV channel that ATG owns is, I think, one of Europe's most modern TV channels. They have one customer, it's ATG. But they're extremely skilled and they could produce almost any kind of like, it's like watching Super Bowl or whatever. It's very, very good. And this is a key to keep customers engaged. Also, we've been through, because we have also online casino and sport, and we've been through, first we just had it very separate, and then it was all about cross sales for 3-4 years, and now we're almost back again to keep it separate, because people, if they are a core horse racing fan, which is 90% of ATG's customers, you don't want to have constantly fed about sport and casino. People get annoyed, so we have to respect. If you are a core fan, give the fans what they want.
Brilliant, thank you. I think you've got a really interesting point there, Gavin. And it's, you know, from a broadcast perspective, and because horse racing is not quite your number one sport, I'm sure data could help you in the same way as kind of football, where you've got all the stats right there for you. And I think kind of horse racing may not be set up, and also we probably do a poorer job in the wider newspaper world to drive horse racing as a sport, as a narrative. You know, especially, you know, jockeys are often in the press for the wrong reasons. We don't celebrate those huge successes. So really, really interesting points there. So I just want to move on to kind of, like Matt, you touched on it before, some of these kind of overlays, what we saw with the Hong Kong Jockey Club. That's really, really interesting. But also with ATG, some of the data points you've got. But are there some untapped data points that we could use to help engage the customers? In an ideal world, say there's a level landscape on kind of data rights and everything. Is there some type of innovation that you'd like to see to try and drive?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the most underused data set that we have at the moment is actually the official ratings. So this is an index that represents the ability of almost every horse that's raced. Only the very lightly raced ones won't have an official rating. And that can be used, you know, ultimately, it can't be anything simpler than a number that represents ability. It's a concept that anybody who's played FIFA will be familiar with. And we can use that not only to, in that simplest way, but you could use it to create division rankings for different disciplines, chasers, hurdlers, sprinters, milers, that we could then create a top 20. Everybody gets the idea of rankings. And so, you know, a good example is when Absurd ran in the Sussex Champion Hurdle back at Easter, everybody on the track knew this is a pretty good horse. But we weren't really able to quantify that. Racing's great at celebrating its champions, but not quite so good at celebrating and acknowledging those that are just below that tier. Absurd was actually the 13th top-rated hurdler in the country. And that might have given a peg for people to really understand, especially if we're able to create those divisions, place them within the race card, so that somebody looking at a race card who's never seen it before says, this is the 20th best sprinter in the country. And I'm talking about, you know, at an ordinary race meeting, you might see horses that are in the top 20, top 50, top 100. I think by creating that kind of, those icons that we can refer to, and we can show where the stars are on an ordinary day, because these are still really good horses. We're missing a trick. So yeah, I think official ratings would be the obvious one that would spring to my mind of the existing subsets.
Racing's quite the paradox, isn't it? It's a sport founded on data and loads of it, but we've been presenting our sport in the same way for 50 plus years. And the facts are, we all know how to read a race card, or some of us might not do in this room. But how do we attract a younger audience? And that is by simplifying it. There's so much data there, but we just don't do a very good job of explaining it. We need to educate audiences, and as Matt has just alluded to, just make them single numbers, which are very easy to understand in a ranking. You also referenced FIFA. My son knows more about football than I could ever dream of. He's 8 years old, and that is because he plays the ultimate team and just reads a score out of 100 against every single different metric which is attributed to a football player or a football team. Horse racing should be no different. And if we're going to attract the younger demographic, into loving the sport of racing, and then subsequently later on in life betting and generating revenue for our sport, we need to simplify it. We really do. And we're lucky enough to be working with Ellipse on Race IQ, where that is the journey that we are on. When we released the Jump Index on ITV, there's lots and lots of people saying this explains it nicely. It's very simple. This is the best jumper in this race. Yes, Ruby Walsh wants to talk about all the complicated metrics and the speed at which the horse is approaching the fence. But does Joe Bloggs watching on ITV at 3:30 on a Saturday afternoon understand or care? They just want to know who is the best jumper in this race. And that's the journey that we need to go on. We need to simplify it. But at the same time, we don't want to alienate, as Jamie said earlier on, we don't want to alienate the aficionado, the guys who want to pore over the data, the ones that want to go and discover it and spend hours and hours looking at the data and making their own assessment. So we need to be able to personalise the experiences and offer for everybody. We've talked about Project Beacon, 6 different personas. We actually need to start building products and services that cater for all of those. And it's just the tip of the iceberg, the simplification. There's many, many parts along that journey that we need to embark on.
Again, I go back to my radio days. So the mantra in radio is to never assume that people know what you're talking about. So if I was talking about something 15 minutes ago, don't assume that if I am talking about that after the news or after I've played 3 songs, that the people that I'm talking to 15 minutes later automatically know what I'm talking about. You have to recap and reset to include everybody at all times. I think that's what data can do. Don't just assume that people know what this race card is or what this piece of information needs or it means. So the aficionados, they know where to find this data because this data is already here. But what about those who don't know? And you almost need a place where it's at a glance data. So very quickly, we are now in a world of where you've got to capture people's minds very quickly. People's minds are made up within seconds. So you need a place where there is data that they can glance at, form an opinion, have an emotional attachment, and then place a bet and a call to action using that data. And it takes split second. So this is where you go back to the simplification of the data. If you are, to your question, there are, Formula One's been mentioned quite a lot, but Formula One has a driver, a jockey, who is at the mercy of a machine underneath them, which is a horse, right? So there are similar parallels with Formula One and a horse race. Am I backing this Formula One driver because he's got the best car, even though he's out of form? Or am I backing the guy who hasn't got necessarily the fastest car, but he's in the best form? So with Formula One that what you're getting, it's easier because there's only 20 of them and they're racing all year round. But you've got all that data, so you know the story behind the driver and you know where the team is, you know what they're doing, you know what McLaren are doing in comparison to Red Bull, you know that AlphaTauri or whatever, Red Bulls have picked up pace. But when it comes to horse racing, are you backing a winner because the jockey's in form? Or are you backing because this horse is unbelievably good and has won 3 of the last 4 races? Is it a combination of both? How do you put that data very quickly to say that this combination is the best combination right here, right now in this race? And it goes back to your point about simplifying the data and having an index system so that, the people very quickly can tell who's in form and which is the best combination of jockey and horse to have a punt on in the source. I'm coming at this completely cold because I'm not from horse racing, but that is data that would possibly help me, that very glance data that would make me make my mind up within a matter of, 60 seconds?
So one of the challenges with horse racing, if you compare it to like Pokemon and Formula One, is like this is alive creatures and they don't last very long. Like for flat racing, sometimes the career is over in 3 years. Very short period of time to create a fan base. In Sweden, we have, as you know, mostly trotting, and the drivers, they're quite anonymous. That's something we would like to work more with because you have to interact and make a fan base and make them personalities. very few of the drivers are personalities. They're not into that. When you look at data points, I think ranking is something we're looking into. We have in the sport in Sweden, we use this gold division, silver division, which is something that I think ATG should use more in order to pinpoint the best races. So some kind of ranking system between drivers, horses, and jockeys is on top of my list, actually.
That's great, and it's almost a case of actually improving the narrative around the drivers, around the jockeys, but also preventing, as Danny said, cognitive overload for people. We can simplify that down. Kind of a slightly different point of, racing has done quite a lot in the past to try and increase its appeal. So, in the UK, for example, we've got the ITV7. We've also, tried and failed really with the Racing League. I mean, is there any kind of innovation that we could do to kind of capture the audience in a kind of organic way? Or is there any innovation that you would like to see at a kind of data level or product level, outside of kind of the stuff that we looked at, which is the overlays, it's free to play, it's fantasy stables? Do you see anything like that ever going to kind of capture people?
I think that we've touched upon simplifying data, and I absolutely think that that's a key thing. I think it needs to be more intuitive, and it needs to sit alongside traditional data so we don't alienate that audience. But it's really about trying to shortcut the experience of forming an opinion. So a content strategy that we always had on our site was to create articles around tipping. That was always highly searched for. It was a good gateway into our platform. But it was really important that came with a degree of education. Someone else touched upon it earlier today, that everything that was written had to be well reasoned and had to be well explained, with the aim that would then lead by educating the end user, that would lead them into doing their research themselves. That's great in theory, but people have less time now. So we have to make that journey as quick as possible. And I think that's going to be the key in the future, being able to answer all those questions that previously you have to drill down and dig out and find quite simple answers. If we can present that right at the start, so that in an instant a user can see and can gauge, and maybe there's an element of gamification that needs to happen there, then yeah, I think that's a great opportunity.
I think the true innovation really is about how we attract people to racecourses. How can we provide them with an experience that they'll never forget? They'll talk to their friends, they'll talk to their colleagues, they'll recommend a day at the races. Frankly put, it starts somewhere, and it starts with that engagement. It starts with having a beer with your friends or a glass of wine with your friends at the racing. That's where the love for racing comes from. And there's very few people that, in this day and age, that are just going to drop onto a sportsbook and go straight to horse racing. We need to give them a reason for it, and we need to educate them about welfare. We need to educate them about the story of a horse on the gallops, to the paddock, to the parade ring, down to the start, and all the way through that race. We need people to fall in love with racing, and actually the experience that they receive on every single racecourse is the start of that journey. And once you've hooked them in to that experience, and let's face it, the younger demographic expect something for nothing. They expect to have a good experience at our expense. The moment that you've given them that, they will start to engage with horse racing. They will start to engage with the data. They will start to engage with other sports as a result as well. So from an operator perspective, we should be looking at working together with broadcasters, with media rights holders, to actually see how we can cultivate attendance to racecourses and actually deliver an experience that they'll never forget.
Yeah, I kind of approach this from an online perspective as well, about where people can enjoy, because I think sport is entertainment, and betting is a form of entertainment. It is entertaining, and I've heard before, and I kind of agree with this, that the betting industry should look at itself as the entertainment industry. So in terms of online, it'd be nice if there was a place where people regardless of age, regardless of knowledge, there was a place where people could come together and just enjoy horse racing together, revolving around content that is about the best bet, the horse racing, the communications, and in there you can include informative data. So people who are coming into this without any prior knowledge of the horse racing industry will pick up knowledge from being within that community, because you'll have content creators in there who are creating content that is aimed purely at people who are coming in, like I just said with the radio. Don't just assume people that know what you're talking about. So I like the idea. One thing that sports broadcast media is the home of is the betting watch along, in terms of encouraging people to stay. It's all about retention. But in that, as well as betting tips and betting knowledge, is also entertainment and fun, where you can celebrate the highs and lows of betting, but also how to celebrate the highs and lows of the sport itself, and collectively as one, because sport is actually better enjoyed together, which is why the second screen experience is such a big thing now. That, myself and Johnny, my colleague, we went to a beautiful pub in Edmonton last night, didn't we, to watch football. It's just better celebrating sport together, and online gives you the ability to do that without leaving the comfort of your living room. So I really like the idea of a community online that loves the sport, loves betting, will celebrate it together, and that's glue. That will increase engagement, that will increase retention, and people will know where to go every single time there is a meeting, whether there's whatever it is, there's a place online for people to go. And what I like about that is it kind of flips content on its head a little bit, because what you do is sometimes you create content, you put it out on a platform, and you hope that people will engage with it. Whereas what you're doing is you're building a community of people who are waiting for you to drop that content into it, and they're going to feed off it, because they know that that's the place to go for that kind of content. So I'm really, akin to what you said about getting people to the courses themselves. I'm quite a fan of building a community online where people will go and engage time after time after time. It's proven that we've done this for football and it works, and that's what I'm a big fan of. In terms of online engagement?
Well, ATG has been too good at online. We are like more than 90% is online. We also banned cash, so you can't really go. If you're not Swedish citizens, you can't go to Sweden and you can't bet. So we are on the opposite side, where we are very, very developed. We have, we bet together, we have socializations, we have communities, we have everything, but we need to get people in touch with horse racing tracks again. And that's a challenge, also because the system in Sweden, where all the tracks are, they live on benefits that comes from betting. So they don't really, have not invested in the actual, the tracks. So it's bad food, everything is rather bad. There's one nice track at Expo Park. It's the flat racing in Stockholm. They have to attract, because people don't bet so much on flat racing. So they have really good food. I could really recommend going there. So we are trying to work together with the sport to get people go back to racing. Also, since everything is digitalized, we actually start looking into, people don't have programs anymore. So now little things like you can start doing notes in your digital programs. So it's a constant flow of innovation going on, and but for us it's a little bit different. We want people to come back to the track.
Fantastic, thanks. And I guess this leads me on to my last question before we open up to the floor. We talked, Josh shared his opening speech, talking about collaboration between rights holders, race courses, operators, content providers. And it's really, where do you see the opportunities? If it was an absolutely level play field, we had no issues with any of the parties involved, what one thing would you do to kind of bring that all together for the betterment of the sport?
I mean, the problem with betting in a way is that it's a lot of other big brands. They don't want to be connected to betting because it's something that's looked upon as a bad thing. So that's why I think entertainment is a good word. Try to make it so we have to have all the safeguards in place in order to make sure we are, customers are doing all right. And so we can create, because I think I'm very much in favor of having this kind of, fantastic, if you have two big brands to come together and do cooperations. So we're trying now to do, in ATT, doing with sports bars. We are trying to do with big media houses. So even though you're not really connected to betting or horse racing, we want like big media houses to have their own like together team to bet on the big, to make horse racing an entertainment and make it part of good brands.
Thank you. I kind of touched on this before. I said the betting watch along really works for me because it's a place for people to, as I said, to enjoy the sport online. You've got tech providers. YouTube has become the second largest channel in the UK, overtaking ITV recently. There's a lot of watch alongs. It's one of the biggest growths on YouTube. So for me, that's a place where you can bring everything together. You've got tech providers who can bring some really decent tech for watch-alongs. You've got chat rooms, chat functions, you've got online visualizations, a level of gamification. You can do quizzes about the sport. It's an entertainment hub as well as a betting hub. Betting operators can have their prices involved, the latest prices, betting information, ahead of a race meet at Southall. That's my horse racing knowledge coming to the fore there. Or wherever. What are the most popular bets? Why are they the most popular bets? So it's not just the here and now, it's looking ahead as to, we can discuss what the most popular bet is and the reason why. So it's a discussion, it's a debate, it's not just a tipping service. For the stakeholders, listen, the element of that with the betting, just going back to that for a second, it is about call to actions and making people go, I like that bet. It's having that emotional attachment to the bets. It's a place where people go, I wasn't interested in that before, but I've heard a nugget of information that suddenly makes me go, I'm interested. And once people are emotionally attached, they're going to follow it. And for stakeholders as well, it's a new way to hit a new audience. It's, people do now, because I've seen it where I'm going to put YouTube on my 50-inch TV in my living room now. It's a new way of consuming. It's this new way of reaching a new audience, a Gen Z. I think we're even beyond Gen Z now. I think we're talking about Gen Alpha now. So there is a huge transition on how people are absorbing content now. And you can just see it if anybody's caught the tube on the way in, and Sean's doing it right now on his phone in the back there. Look, it's how people consume content all the time. And it's tapping into that. And that's where I can see a real opportunity for everybody to benefit.
The opportunity is collaboration. We all work in silos most of the time. It's really important that we start to come together and we think about the end consumer and actually think about the end consumer first and then work backwards to actually how we commercialise it. We need to take inspiration from other sports. I think that is incredibly important. The success of football, many years ago, we were talking about the scorecast in the pub, the correct score and the first goal scorer. I was talking to Rodders about it earlier on. And now we're talking about every pass, every shot, every tackle, every foul even. I believe that's one of the most popular bets these days. There's no reason for us to believe that horse racing can't use the GPS tracking data that we've got available to talk about every stride, every furlong, every speed, every miles per hour. It needs to get into the vernacular of those that are attending racing, as I've already spoken about, but also those that are betting on it. And we need to do that together. Not one individual organisation is going to be able to do that. It will drive engagement first and foremost, and then it will drive betting. I believe this time last year I wasn't here. There was a debate about a bet builder in racing between a couple of the operators. Why we've been so slow to adopt this in horse racing is sort of beyond me. We understand obviously Bet365 have had theirs live for a little while and why others haven't followed them in, but it's critical. It's absolutely critical because actually from a bookmaker's perspective, and I'm sure some of the operators here would sort of talk about it, Bet Builder is a huge share of voice on any sportsbook. For horse racing to compete with that marketing share of voice, in a very, very busy landscape is very important. It is very important. It's become an expectation for consumers at this stage for any sports betting. So we need to work together. We need to work together as rights holders. We need to work together as data owners, and we need to work together with operators to actually understand what the consumers want and then work backwards to deliver solutions for them.
I think that we're one of the challenges that faces the sport is that by the age of 15, most young people have decided which sports they're going to follow. And racing isn't on the horizon. And there's reasons it's not on that horizon. For example, you can't register with our site until you're 18 because of the bookmaker messaging that you'll be exposed to. So if we're looking for an opportunity to collaborate, there's a growing international sentiment which seems to be that you tell the story of the race first. I know I'm contradicting myself what I said at the very start about the thrill of a winning bet, but bear with me. There's this view that you tell the story of racing first and wagering will follow afterwards. And maybe we could devote a little bit of effort into that direction. In terms of collaboration, could we as an industry build a fan platform that is not linked to betting, but is about the sport first, that tells those stories? There'd be collaboration there without the risk of cannibalization. We could target an audience that is all ages, but particularly towards the younger demographic. If we're really concerned that there isn't the interest there that's coming through, it could be a test bed for some of the ideas we come up with around. We can still present form and information about the race to them on content. Project Beacon outlined that jockeys were the number one method of attracting new audiences to the sport. If you think about it, that might be because we're used to following human athletes rather than equine athletes. So I think we should, absolutely echo the sentiments here that, collaboration is the way. We don't want to cannibalise one another's independent businesses, but is there a way that we can work for the greater good of the sport to drive a future generation engagement within it?
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I just want to open up questions to the floor. So, I've got anything? Yeah, always.
So a question for Ylva around, you are generating a lot of content to the media and to journalism, right? Do you have a view of what kind of narratives and storytelling work better than others when you're kind of getting content out there?
Well, the easy answer for me is that we actually do everything of that. What has been very, I think, it's very hard to choose because we do everything that is, the boring stuff that you can still read about horse racing in every newspaper in the morning, and then it's very focused on the betting with tips. Then you have all the social media with the Instagram, Facebook, and we interact. And then you have the big broadcaster TV4, which is the biggest commercial broadcaster in Sweden, where we have every Wednesday and we have Saturday morning TV, where you have and we have really made this TV anchor. He's a personality, and he comes and he tries food and he's talk about horses and educate people. So I think if I should choose something, I would say, even though it's like the traditional TV media is not for the next generation, but still the core bettors is still there. So I think that to be visible on national TV constantly every week is still very, very important for us. I think that's because it is all about the sport, and it's about the big races. It's lots of soft values, and then adding, of course, the chance of winning a lot of money. So it's a big and important window for us.
Great, thank you. Any more questions from the floor? Yep.
Does the kind of panel agree that perhaps more can be done again for the next generation of hunters in terms of the kind of on-course experience, conscious that a lot of people get into racing with friends, family, drinking, etc., and wasting a few bets. At the other end of the scale, you might have kind of family fun day and face painting, but that kind of 12 to 17-year-old can get caught in the middle. I'd be interested to know what you think could be done to engage that audience better on the course.
think that.
Who's going first? Well, the answer is yes, because I always believe there's always something that can be done. The interesting thing is did you say 12 to 17? Here's an example, which is as you were talking about, and I can completely agree, that is making horse racing fun without the element of betting. So how can you make horse racing fun without element of betting? And what you're generally talking about is the TikTok generation. So how can you invite someone to Cheltenham, to the Gold Cup, who wants to go and just have a bit of an experience? What is it you want them to leave with? What is it the knowledge of the horse racing industry that makes them go, do you know what? I wasn't too sure about this. I don't know what I was going into, but actually I'm going to come back. And that's the question that I probably don't have the answer to now, but it's an interesting question to be asked about how do we make sure that if they do, because with the greatest respect, sometimes if you look at Cheltenham and what you see on TikTok, it's not always the best footage, is it? It's the brawl that you see that gets to 36,000 views. Well, how do you compete with that? How do you make people basically digitize it themselves? What's the incentivization for them to get out their Instagram and take a video so they start to spread the good side of horse racing, the entertainment side of it? What can be done to encourage that? I don't necessarily have the answers to that, but I think it's an important question to be asked, and I hope that you have an answer for it.
For me, Ian, it's education. So actually spending the time with the younger audience to educate them about the sport of racing, because after all, like I said earlier on, I think bettors come from an interest in the sport. Now, should we have an aspiration to turn every 12-year-old into a horse racing bettor? Probably not. But we as people within the sport want to have sports fans. And the only way to do that is to ingrain them in it, embed them in the sport itself, get yourself to the paddock, get yourself to the parade room, go and see the beautiful animals that are the horses that we're racing with every single day. Get to know the jockeys. It's really important. And as Matt eloquently said earlier on, Project Beacon talked about the emotional connection. We'll fall in love with the sport and then everything follows.
Yeah, I've got 2 children in that age category myself, Ian, and there's definitely the thing they associate themselves most with is the humans, the jockeys. I took my 2 to Carlisle. I've tried very hard not to force my interest onto my children. I took my 2 to Carlisle one summer holiday. Why I went on holiday in the summer to Carlisle is another different story. But the jockeys there were fantastic, and they did things like they gave their goggles to various kids, and they will. There's a real willingness on the part of the horsemen to participate as well. And that's something that I think sometimes we assume isn't going to happen, or we overlook. And I think there's a great opportunity at local level to do that. It doesn't have to be at the Cheltenham Gold Cup or at Royal Ascot when they're in that crucible of pressure. It's at the smaller meetings, which are cheaper to go in, that have the family fun days, where there can be that interaction. And that, for me, just brings it back to kind of, let's take the risk that go with the content first. If you really think it's good enough, go with the content and the data first, and hope that wagering comes. That hope's not a strategy.
No, I just want to add to it, because we had this voter forum. We had a Hong Kong Jockey Club talked about that horse racing is not looked upon as a cool thing. It's a boring dad's thing. So they try to work into some kind of coolness. And I was part of a session at Lisbon, and we had, I don't know who said it, but we had to bring sexy back to racing. So it's about, make it a bit cool and a bit like, I don't know if sexy is good enough to say to a 12-year-old, but I think it make it and use the big events, and as I said, create personalities among the active people. And also, I mean, it's horse betting. If you look at if you shares some hedge funds, and it's cool. It's cool to be knowledgeable and to be smart. And horse racing and betting is also about being smart. So put some smartness into it.
Love it. Thanks. I think there was just one more question. Yeah.
I'd like to go back to the fan engagement aspect. And Ylva, you've mentioned something about entertainment.
Yes.
And you're Ryan mentioning something about creating an experience customer will never forget. So when did this become so important in horse racing? Why is this not about horse racing anymore, but also about those aspects as entertainment experience? When did this happen and why is this so important?
Well, I think it's just the media landscape today it's so much. It's so much to choose from. So you have to stand out. You can't just rely on people that will come automatically. It won't. You have to start early to engage people. Anyone who feel like yeah.
No, but just think of the competition now. My granddad was a big football fan, and it might not mean anything if you're not from the UK, but he used to just have the big match, which was like a couple of games with one camera angle. Now you can watch any football game as long as it's not 3 p.m. on a Saturday like last night and tonight. We've got football all over the place. You can flick between 20 odd football games tonight. If you don't fancy that, you can watch what you want on Netflix. If you don't fancy that, you can put your Xbox on. If you don't fancy that, you can just go on YouTube on your phone. The competition is so enormous now, and to capture people's minds. I go back to something that stuck with me that someone said. Now, if you listen to a song in the 80s, sometimes there'd be like a 45-second intro to a song before the lyrics start. Now there isn't. It's literally straight in, because you have seconds to engage someone's mind. So you have to work hard to go ignore all those distractions, ignore all the competition. This is where you want to be right now, because you're going to get all you need. You're going to get your information about the horses, the jockeys, but we're also going to add a level of gamification. We're going to have a quiz. We're going to have a bit of fun. There's no reason to disappear and switch us off and put the Xbox on or whatever. I think the main challenge with content and in today's day and age, it's not about getting eyes on, it's about keeping eyes on. So you have to work harder to keep people's eyes on. It's as simple as that.
I'm not sure I've got much more to add than that, apart from it's become the expectation. It's become the expectation for every single audience that they want to be given an experience and they expect to be given an experience. And if you cannot hold their attention, as Gavin has quite rightly said, they're only going one place and that's to another sport, or they can go and get instant gratification from tennis to football to basketball to NFL. It's all over our TV. You've got to give them an experience that they're going to want to come back to, and they're going to want to tell their friends, their family and everyone about.
I don't want to misquote the stats here, but I think that Project Beacon said 14% of total racecourse attendances were people were going for the sport. And I think that is quite a surprising fact. I mean, do 14% of people go to a football match or a cricket match for the sport? Probably not, probably much, much, much higher. I think that it's great we could get racing's a well-attended sport. It's great that we can get people in through the gates, but it's what we do with them when they're there that we may be missing a trick. A common experience might be that somebody picks horses at random, picks 3 losers, it's 30 quid down. Do you know what? I'll give it a miss. It's a lovely experience. I'm going to have a few drinks in the bar, not bother watching any more races. And that, don't want to generalise, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's quite a common experience. When they're on the track, we've got to help them find winners. We've got to have not just a tipping panel an hour before the races. We've got to have that 10 minutes when the horses have left the winner's enclosure and no one's in the paddock. Why not have a tipster or a form analyst just running through the basics of the race that's coming up, telling you what they fancy, why they fancy it? That's going to engage the audience. That's going to get them more involved. And to come back to my first point, there's a chance that they'll then have that rush of backing a winner, and then they're on the on-ramp. Then it's over to you and how you communicate with them to try and keep them there. And I think that, it's a really good point that the experience when they're there matters as much as getting them there in the first place.
That's great. Great answer. Thanks. Are there any more burning questions? We're coming up to an hour going. No? Okay, just leaves me with one final thing to thank the panellists here.